Now, onto the show. Our guest has a lot to talk about, so we don't want to keep him waiting. I hope you have at least one stereotype shattered and destroyed by the end of this podcast. So, enough of me. Joe, the floor is yours. First of all, welcome.
Hello,
Um,
YG. Thanks for having me.
and it's a pleasure having you on the program today. Um, I just wanted you to talk a little bit
Mhm.
about your background, specifically, country of origin, of course, Lebanon, and your experiences in the United States. I don't know if you lived in different states or different cities, and what
Mhm.
that looks like.
Well, 2 years ago, I immigrated to the United States from Lebanon. I used to live in a rather small town called Zgharta in the north. I moved here 2 years ago on July 25th of 2018, initially to Massachusetts.
Okay.
Um, I lived in Massachusetts in Haverhill,
Okay.
which was quite close to New Hampshire. And
Okay.
I also worked in Glasgow, New Hampshire, and that
Okay.
was for about 6 months. I lived with my uncle there
Okay.
before I eventually decided to move down to Florida. Sweet warm Florida in
I
comparison
have
to
never been.
Massachusetts.
I bet the weather is
Uh,
much better.
it's really warm here in Omar. It's really nice weather. So I moved to Naples, Florida initially, and where my aunt lived before moving up now to Tallahassee for my college education at FSU.
Cool.
And what I want to say is it's so different between these three places that I've been. I
Really?
mean, I have driven all the way from Massachusetts down to Florida, so I've seen
Oh,
all the different states. And I was really surprised at it almost feels like it was colorful.
yeah.
Like uh the climate change and everything while moving down, you could notice the difference between the states nature-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, for sure.
even culture-wise, you noticed. I know it's like Massachusetts, the way the buildings are, the way the accent the people spoke, the even the slang sometimes. It's
Mm-hmm.
different up there than it's down here. But the real difference is between here and Lebanon. Now that was a huge difference. Like everything was like flipped upside down for me. The roads here are
Really?
just so organized. The buildings, everything. Lebanon, it was. I mean, in my town, I didn't have any traffic lights, man.
Oh,
In my
wow.
town, it was really some really wacky stuff. What was going on in Lebanon? Even like it's so much cleaner here. It's so much more organized. That's like
I,
my first impression.
I had to agree that that was my impression too, even though I came to the hood. Even coming to the hood, it wasn't as bad as just the how underdeveloped Puerto Rico was. And that's that's a misrepresent because people usually think slummy, and honestly, where I moved to could be considered slummy. But just like you said, uh, the roads weren't labeled. The construction is much different, much better materials used. Even a rundown house at some point in the United States had a much more nicer facade. So um, where I'm from, uh, there were shacks and houses with aluminum ceilings. So
Yeah, we have some of those in Lebanon too.
okay,
If you look in AAA in the cities, but mostly buildings are concrete in Lebanon, and
same.
the more expensive ones, like they're dressed with stone,
Oh,
like stone buildings, and
very nice.
the old buildings, like Ottoman era buildings,
Uh-huh.
those were all stone buildings, and they had these designs, these Arabic designs, and
Ooh.
they were really unique to look at in comparison to here, which all the buildings I believe are mostly wood and drywall.
Yeah, I honestly, and I think that that really played a huge part in how construction projects work because here in the United States, there's always something under construction. It's like you have winter, construction season, fall, and winter. Like they'll and honestly, they'll build in the winter even if they have the chance. Um, construction projects take half the time, or even a third or less of the time in Puerto Rico because it's drywall and wood. Concrete. I'm not a construction guy, but I'm pretty sure that concrete is much more difficult to manage than drywall and wood.
Yeah, I would say so. And it's actually in Lebanon, it would take way longer than over
Really?
here. It's but that mostly has to do with them lacking the pay or the workers being lazy, but less to do with them actual work, you know? So that's kind of the stuff we used to face problems in Lebanon. But here, there's always a construction project. They're always fixing the highway. There's always something.
Yes.
They want
I
to do something here.
well, honest, I this is a thing that I just can't handle. It seems to be they're selective with the highways that they fix, and see, and this is another thing that's really different between Puerto Rico and the United States, and you chime in if Lebanon is similar in this aspect too. The United States is very specific and really delineates what part of government does which. You have the federal level, the state, county, and then the local level. And what's really interesting is um, in Latin America or the Middle East or probably Europe. I don't know how Europe works, but I know that power is much more centralized. And not to get too much into politics, but here it's because the powers are divided. Going back to construction, you'll see state-funded roads be repaired at a much faster rate than anything that's local. Um, I remember going to Buffalo, which is nearby where I live, and the roads within the city were horrible. Like it looked like I'm sorry, it looked like Kenya. The pictures I've seen of Kenya, because I would like to have a guest from Kenya and have them clarify things. But the pictures that they show from, they'll probably stay on the road at least. I would hope. Um, yeah, no. Uber,
I
no.
really like your mug, yo.
What?
The gun, the mug.
Oh, when I went to Texas.
Oh yeah, Texas one, yeah.
Yeah, Texas. Yeah, I love Texas, and oddly enough, I love California, or at least Southern California. Yes, only Southern California until Northern California proves me otherwise. Uh, you know what? I'm not even gonna talk much because that'll be too identifiable. I can't even. Um. Okay. Um. So. So on the language front, because this is, of course, a very language focused channel, um, I speak, well, I profess to speak 6 languages. I can only communicate effectively in three. Um, and I believe you said you're multilingual yourself. So what languages do you speak?
I was taught in school to speak English, French, and Arabic. Those are
And
the three
so,
main languages we learn in Lebanon. Yes.
so I know that Puerto Rico, we are are told or are made to learn English because it used to be the second language, second official language of the island. But what people don't know, especially us in the Puerto Rican diaspora, is that in the 2000s they made a law that removed English as an official language. Their claim was, well, not many people speak English, and it's like that's a disadvantage. That's nothing to be proud of. But unfortunately, even that's a political stance. I'm not getting into it. Um,
Yeah, it's, unfortunately, a lot of things, especially when it comes to language, a lot of things get politicized. But that's not the case in Lebanon. In
really?
Lebanon, the official language is Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the sole official language, with the side languages being English and French. Now,
Okay.
I mean, if when you meet a Lebanese person, he's likely to know these three languages as well, for the most
Okay.
part.
Mm-hmm.
And French is really big in Lebanon, especially in like the previous generations. Right now, it's English. 'Cause
Okay.
most people speak English, but it used to be
Okay.
French, like to be the big language because like my parents speak French. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the adults in Lebanon, a lot of them speak French. And
Mm-hmm.
it's mostly because Lebanon, in its essence, it has a lot of French culture in it. And that has a lot to do with the
Mm.
history because Lebanon was under French occupation for a while. And they're basically who brought Lebanon to modernity.
Mm.
They're the ones that they modernized Lebanon. They're the ones that actually made Beirut what it is now. The railroads, the architecture, everything. It's all French. The
And
schools,
even the
everything.
architecture, interesting.
The
So
even electricity. They brought a lot of things to Lebanon.
now I know that the word occupation usually people associate it with something evil and nefarious, but it seems like Lebanon benefited from it. Am I wrong?
Um, to say Lebanon definitely benefited from it. That was probably it's basically what made Lebanon Lebanon because Lebanon wouldn't exist without France. You
Interesting.
know, France basically made Lebanon. Like
Really?
the borders. They're the ones who drew the borders. Otherwise, Lebanon would just be Syria right now.
Really?
But
What?
they're the ones that made Lebanon. They're the ones that drew the borders. They're the ones that consolidated it. Before that, there was like a Christian protectorate in
Hmm.
Lebanon. It
What
wasn't
is
all of
that?
Lebanon. It was, I believe I think 1812 or something like that. The
Hmm.
European powers um, they made the Ottoman Empire allow a Christian protectorate in Lebanon because there was a majority Christianity in a certain area. Those
Mm.
were, I believe, they were Catholic and Orthodox Christians, Maronites for the most part, and I believe some Druze. And it was the region in the mountains of Lebanon. It was the West Lebanese mountain chain. That's where
Interesting.
Lebanon stemmed from. After
Interesting.
that, when the Ottomans lost the war and French occupation came. Now, I want to say occupation because France didn't conquer Lebanon. They came in as a temporary solution initially.
That that is a very interesting distinction to make because again the perception and even myself I when I hear the word occupation I think of something hostile, but
Yeah,
that's not
so
really what it is.
so let me explain historically how this happened. The
Uh-huh.
Ottomans were on the retreat and the British advanced from Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
They advanced, they were victorious, they liberated Lebanon, and for a time, an Arabian government, for like one day, an Arabic government came over and took over Beirut. It
Mm-hmm.
was under, I believe, King Faisal. He was part of the Arabian resistance, I
Uh-huh.
believe. And then France came in and occupied Lebanon. They were, it was, now this kind of occupation is not conquer. It's not conquering. It's um, what in definition. Now that's not what really happened, but in definition, um, this kind of occupation was agreed upon by
Oh,
the world powers after the war at, I think, at Versailles. And
okay.
the United States proposed something that along the lines where they just move in professionals to help these countries rebuild and build a country of their own, a government of their own. And but the Europeans wanted to conquer. They wanted land.
Mm.
So at the end of the day, now initially the United States was supposed to be the one that occupied Lebanon or something, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But things went sour with the relations, and the United States would no longer negotiate with the Europeans because they just wanted to conquer. And at the end of the day, they agreed, okay, we're not gonna conquer them. We're just gonna go there and occupy them for a few years until we build them up so they can stand on their own. That was the idea.
Okay, so
But
a
later on,
benevolent Godfather situation.
a benevolent Godfather situation, but as usual, it's not as good as it sounds.
Real
What ended up
okay.
happening is they actually went in, they occupied, they stole the gold from the people.
Oh,
They
like they
took a
did to
lot
Puerto
of
Rico.
yeah,
Thank
they
you,
did that,
Spain.
and yes, that's pretty much what happened. I mean, it wasn't as bad actually, and they took the money, but what at least they did is they invested a lot of that money they took. They
Hmm.
invested it in building up the country to what it is now. to what it was in its golden age. I mean, we kind of went back by now, but uh, especially that's how the French benefited Lebanon. Now they were a
Hmm.
bit easier on us than they were on the Syrians, to be honest, because there were a lot more Christians in Lebanon than in Syria,
Mm.
and there was a little religious bias at the time.
So now that you mentioned religion, and like we really don't touch religion on this podcast, but what role did you think that religion played? Is it because they had that familiarity, that similarity, that they had a much easier time relating to each other? Um,
Um, Religion and the territory where Lebanon is situated. The thing is, Lebanon is very diverse. It's more diverse than it should have been because
mm,
the country now originally Lebanon started out like as I said as this little protectorate,
mm-hmm,
and it was mostly Christian. But when
mm-hmm,
those territories were added by the French, they drew
mm-hmm,
them. They added a lot of those territories were majority Muslim, mostly Sunni and Shia.
mm-hmm.
But also during the World Wars, World War One in specific, you all heard, I mean, about the Armenians. They started immigrating to Lebanon to escape oppression.
Oh, the
So
Armenian
had a lot of
genocide, yeah.
exactly. There was a huge amount of Armenians and Assyrians immigrated to Lebanon, alongside the Druze who were over there, and that's how Lebanon ended up being very diverse religion-wise. Later on,
That's
that caused some problems
interesting.
in the country, but now, thankfully, everybody's living in brotherhood and everybody's open to the other.
Now, I have my opinions on how those dynamics play out and how they can improve and how they can be bad. But I'm really curious to see how it got to that brotherhood. What made Lebanon be a nation of all these identities, and then all of a sudden everybody identifies as Lebanese, is what I'm hearing.
Uh, the Sadly, the Civil War was a very divisive event, and honestly, nobody won. Everybody got hurt,
Mm.
and it's that after, and a lot of people left Lebanon because they just couldn't stand it anymore. And
Was it?
that,
Do you think that that has? Sorry, I'm turning around, but I wonder, and I'm not good with dates at all. Johan is a history buff, and seems you are too. But was that probably the time where there was a huge Lebanese diaspora in Latin America? Because Latin America seems to have uh, a large population of Middle Eastern
yeah,
people, particularly Lebanese.
particularly Lebanese in Brazil.
Okay, which
My grandfather, he had family in Brazil. They actually
uh-huh.
called him to go up to Brazil and live with them, but he refused. He wanted to stay at home in Lebanon.
Okay,
And
no Brazil.
yes, yes, in Brazil,
Eh,
especially, um, it wasn't actually the Civil War that caused
Oh,
all people to immigrate there. A lot of people immigrated in the Civil War to everywhere, North America, Europe, everywhere.
okay.
But specifically the to Brazil, I think it was mostly under the Ottoman Empire
Oh,
because
that would make sense.
now the Ottoman occupation was tyrannical.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
heard.
during during especially during the First World War because that's when stuff really started going downhill.
Yeah.
They started blaming the people there and committing war crimes and whatnot. And that was because of there's a specific radical party that took over the empire at the time, and that's
Oh.
how they're called the Young Turks. They were pretty radical.
Oh, oh, the irony. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know they were called. I believe they were in translation to English. They were called the Young Turks.
Well, yeah.
And
Do you know why that's ironic?
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Oh, they denied the Armenian genocide, or at least decided to sidestep it. I'm sorry, but yeah, no, you can't deny it. It happened, and the Ottoman Empire screwed over a lot of people. Um, Now that you mentioned the Ottoman Empire, and we don't want to get too political, but it is history. I mean, we can't avoid talking about Nazism if Nazism played a part in a country's history. Now,
Hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, the Ottoman Empire enslaved many countries, or did they just occupy them? Was slavery a component?
Um, Under the Ottoman Empire, Lebanon suffered a lot.
Uh-huh.
Famine, famine was pretty much the worst. Uh, I don't remember what you call it in English, but I think there was like a locust invasion, I would say. Uh,
Huh?
I'm not sure what's in English. It's like
A
these
plague?
huge packs of, not a plague, a huge amount of insects that would just ravage the countryside and they ravage the agriculture. I'm not sure what's called in English. They
I think
did
it's called
that.
a plague.
That happened during the Ottoman Empire, and it caused a huge famine in Lebanon. And the Ottomans just they exported all the goods for war effort, and they took all the doctors with them. So it was very tyrannical. They really choked the country out because there was like a naval naval barricade, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
called, of the sea. And so the
Mm-hmm.
Ottomans, in response, instead of actually doing something about it, they just did a land barrier and they closed off Lebanese border from the land. So Lebanon was enclosed and there was no way to flow in resources. And a lot of people died from that famine, and it caused, I mean, it grew. It's probably what caused this Lebanese sense of identity to grow because we all went through that pain together, no matter what your religion was. At the end of the day, you were
Interesting.
Lebanese, and that's what you went through. And the Ottomans really treated Arabs like second-class citizens. They just took the Turks as the first class, and they treated all the Arabs, no matter what their religion was, they were treated as second-class citizens. And this is part of the reason the Lebanese people are so united despite their religious differences.
Hmm. See,
There's
and
another thing.
go ahead.
The main reason, however, under our unity is the civil war and this shared pain that we experienced together. And because it was a war of religion, everybody remembers how stupid it was and it shouldn't have happened because it was brother against brother. And another
That's the
day,
consensus I
Christians
hear.
killed Christians and terror and Christians killed Christians and killed Muslims and Lebanese army even killed Lebanese army at one point.
Oh my God.
Because they split up, and
So did it end up being ideological rather than religious? Because the
um,
the tensions that are boiling up in America are.
ideological. It started as religious, then turned ideological, then turned downright political. But at the end of the
Hmm.
day, the memory of such a horrible event is what keeps people united because they want to avoid having any of that happen again.
That's amazing. I really mean it because I'm sure you've noticed here in America that we don't call ourselves American. We qualify or we differentiate ourselves by our country of origin. So I'm Hispanic American and you're Lebanese American, but in Lebanon everybody's Lebanese no matter what they look like. And in Puerto Rico
That's
was the same.
true. If you're Lebanese, you're Lebanese.
And
There isn't a big topic of race over there, and religion isn't something you downright ask somebody about. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, for example, my friends here that are Lebanese,
hmm
we immediately became friends just because we're Lebanese. We didn't care
hmm
about background, where we came from, or what our religion was. We just
and
became friends because we're Lebanese.
you bring up religion quite a bit, and it seems like that is how society sort of segments itself into subcultures. Like it's basically the equivalent of race here in America. Would that be a
That
fair
is true.
assessment?
Yes, that's a fair assessment. It's, in fact, that's the closest thing to race as it comes in
Hmm.
Lebanon. But the thing is, they even if you have a different religion, most of the time it's something they usually don't talk about or they just down ignore because it honestly doesn't matter. You're Lebanese at the end of the day. And here, I mostly, for example, if I see a black person and a white person, to me they're both American. I don't
Thank
see
you.
them as two
Thank you.
different. I don't see them as two different people of two different origin of two something. You're American to me.
Thank you.
That's
And
that, that's how I see it.
that is both a beautiful and very important thing to mention. And I really, 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 really hope that on every platform where this goes out, that that becomes a little bit more um, evident in
Hmm.
people in the Western world because I mean, yes, Puerto Rico is part of the Western world and it's part of America, but people don't understand how you can be politically part of a country and have a separate culture entirely. Like you're saying, like Lebanon and France are two different entities despite having a relationship. The cultures evolve differently. I'm getting that right, correct?
Yes, definitely.
And so when when you come from a different culture and you see these different things such as how race relations are in Puerto Rico, yes, the word down there is colorism or the mind where they're trying to implement is colorism. And it existed. However, the great thing about it was at the end of the day, we still had the same identity. There was no such word as Afro Latino or Afro Puerto. That was the people accepted that the likelihood was that you had some element of one of the three races within you, and so trying to keep track of that is stupid because at some point in time we're all going to be very, very mixed. And when I came to the United States and saw voluntary segregation, and I saw people just really, really harp on to race and just be apprehensive to the word American. Like when I speak to family, they don't like to say they're American. They say I'm Puerto Rican, and I, I have to keep reiterating to people, Puerto Ricans in particular are Spaniard, African, and Taino, and the Taino and the Spaniard part are often forgotten, and people say, "Oh, I'm black," and it's like you have African ancestry, you have Taino ancestry, and you have European ancestry, not one over the other. Um, and it's all equal. You don't have to pick one. And newsflash, Spaniard is white, is European. Get over it. What are your thoughts on that matter?
To be honest, I don't see why it matters so much. I mean, at the end of the day, you're you don't have the Spanish nationality. You don't have the nationality of an African country. You live in Puerto Rico. This is you. This is your country. This is your birthplace.
Culture.
This is your culture. This is everything you've seen in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is just a genetic, biological descendant. I would like to say, it's
And wait,
just ancestry. But then again, you didn't really live as a Spaniard or as an African. You lived as a Puerto Rican. This is your life.
and
Everything else is just something in the past.
what you just said is really interesting. It made me think. I don't live as a Spaniard. I don't know enough about the Spaniard culture, nor do I know about the African culture, but I like African percussion and I like the Spanish language. Who I am as a person is based on the mixture of the cultures, and so that is really what both of us are about, and what this channel is about. Is it's there's no reason to separate. At the end of the day, we're all human, and at the end of the day,
That's
it's
true.
like cultural. I don't believe in cultural appropriation. Sorry if this offends somebody, but if you are a Caucasian person and you want to eat rice and beans, you want to, well, I can't get permission for tortillas. If you want to listen to salsa, you want to listen to Despacito and sing it, I don't care if you even sing with a bad accent. I am honored that you're um interested in my culture. Like what are your
What I
what
want to say to that is, I don't know what cultural appropriation is. I mean, I have an idea, but I don't understand why it's a problem. Culture is not something you own. Culture is shared. And And that's something that spreads to people. I mean, the whole point of having your culture is you want to spread it. You don't want
Well,
to
you
keep it
would
to
think.
yourself. No, this is mine. This is you're not supposed to do that.
You would
No, I
think.
encourage you to act. I encourage you to learn my language. I encourage you to learn my culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at the end of the day, cultures mix, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how
Oh, they do.
Puerto Rican culture is, and that's uh, that's the beauty of America. It's America has its own culture, and
It
it
does.
also brings in from other cultures, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
glory of the United States. That's how the United States grew to be a superpower because it drew the best from everything.
And
You get all the diverse people and new ideas.
now that you mentioned that, what was again without getting political? What what is your perception on America? Because for me, people in Puerto Rico and people in the Hispanic community say, "Oh, those white people, they look at you funny. They're gonna look at you. They're not gonna accept you for who you are." I I've been very accepted. I feel very welcome in the places
The
where
funny
people said
thing
I'm not
here
supposed to.
is I found that people are just so friendly. Like no matter what the race is. I mean, I have black friends, I have white friends, I have Hispanic friends, I have friends from different races, but I don't look at their race. Like I know I just said their races, but I'm just classifying as what you say.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the race really doesn't matter to me because I
They
just like
didn't
the
pick
person
it.
for who he is.
Right,
You
right.
know? I mean, I just look at them to who they are as a person. Are they a fun person, polite, good? And you know what I mean? But the race really doesn't matter. It's not. It's about how one's raised and how the experiences a person goes through in their
Right,
life. Like
right,
you can have two, for example, two white people, and for example, you see two white people. One is like say Slovak, and the other is American. They have nothing in common. Like they have
right.
completely different life experiences, different language, different everything. So this color of the skin thing, it's really not enough to like to tell
It's
you anything. I mean, each person has their individuality, and that's something people need to focus on.
it's too reductive and it's hilarious now they bring skin color. There are there are pale Hispanics. There are pale Arabs. Like I worked with a Palestinian guy that was so pale, his skin looked like milk. Like
I had a couple Lebanese friends who were blonde. I have
really,
blonde Lebanese friends. Yes,
natural blondes.
yeah,
See,
natural
and
blondes. I mean,
and so it's like
dark blonde hair.
so when I'm gonna go there. When you see people demonize whiteness, you're really demonizing people from all around the world. People can be white and be of so many different backgrounds, and that being white doesn't make a person less than, or doesn't make them more than.
When you're demonizing whites, who are you targeting?
Right.
I mean,
Um,
you got. I mean, for what I know, white people have been finding. I mean, how can I even say white people? Like people that look white have been fighting each other for centuries. Like, who are you trying to attack?
right. And now that you mentioned that, and this is something that that we're gonna explore with future guests. Um, white, like I said, white is so reductive, and you have people from that came here from Italy that weren't classified as white until I don't know what point. You had Jewish people that weren't classified as white until whatever point. Ukrainians, all these newer immigrants that didn't come on the Mayflower, but for some reason are all classified as the color of their skin. It's reductive. It's honestly disrespectful. Um, like if you are a black person and you know where you're from, I want to know. Like if you're Haitian, if you're Jamaican, like if you're whatever, I want to know. Like reducing it just to like black, like it's again it's reductive, and I know that the unfortunately with black people, us that are descended from African slaves, we don't really have those records. And so black in America, from what I understand, and if you can correct me, black in America refers to people who came out of slavery. Um, it is not meant to identify a skin color, from what I understand. Or
Um, to be honest, I don't have much thought about that. I don't really know much about this, but
but
I can give my opinion.
go
And in
ahead.
my opinion, if a person has brown skin, it's just classified as black. I guess you can classify them as black. I don't try to look back at the history of slavery of stuff that happened 300 years ago. I mean, it was wrong, but we cannot just hang on to the demons of the past to
Oh
help
yeah.
us identify who we are now.
Well, now that you bring that up, about bringing up demons of the past, I what would the Middle East look like if everybody brought up the demons of the past?
The thing is, they the demons of the past are the demons of the present in the Middle East.
Oof.
They never left. It's always been that way. Like ever since God knows when, the Middle East has always been in turmoil. There's always something going on. Um, we do. I mean, in Lebanon, we try to let go of what happened in the past, but still, there's still a lot going on in the country.
So
Whether it be
is it based on what's going on, or is it based on people reiterating and retelling things that have happened?
it's just a continuous process.
Okay.
They're not. I mean, I wouldn't say they're retelling anything, but then again, it's just the same violence, the same people hating the same people.
Hmm.
Actually, that changed a little bit, actually, but there's still roots of it which goes way back, and it's just been continuously fighting, and it's especially among the ignorant. It's mostly out of ignorance this happening,
Our buddy
and then
Commander
you get
Z has signed on.
yeah, I've seen
He
him.
better comment. He better comment, or I will kill him. Um,
Do you know what I could kill Commander Z, Nolar?
I cannot do that. I can't do that. He is such an important character in the novel. For those of you who don't know, I'm specifically talking about our friend Freddy who just signed on. Um, or he left. I see one here. Anyway, he is one of the main supporting characters in my novel, or a character based off of him. He's because he's not 50 in real life. But he is hilarious. He is also one of the biggest jerks in the book. I had a lot of fun writing that character. Um,
Yeah, Commander
and
Z is awesome, Bungie.
yeah, yeah, he is he is a character. Like I had one beta reader say, wherever he is, you know he's there, even if he doesn't say anything. Um, so when your character is what, not to go too much into the book because we have more to talk about, but one of the interesting parts about your character is that originally he was meant to be just in one scene, and then the importance that he played is just like when I looked at it, it's like, oh my God, like Joe is at least in like three scenes in this novel, and if it ever becomes a video game, like I said, it's probably going to be one of the main stages if it's like a fighting game or something. And I'm not going to give him more of the plot. Let's continue.
You have me as a merchant.
Yeah. Don't give that. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
you can get it. Yeah.
shoot.
The
Sorry, Bungie.
no, it's fine. In the novel, Joe Kamari is a probably four. I need to get the time right. He's he owns a chain of boutiques all around the country. He immigrated here with his wife Nadia, and I don't have they have two kids. Um, and then something really bad happens, and he ends up moving to Eastern Europe, and that's where the story really picks up. But yeah, I'm not gonna tell the story. Very interesting character to the point where like I might even write a short story just to tell Joe, the fictitious Joe's backstory. Um, okay, so you going back to the language component. Um, you said you said French and you said English. Now,
Hmm.
you said that the reasoning was because of the French occupation. What about English though? Like, what was the reasoning with English?
Um, there was, of course, an English presence in Lebanon. Even there was a place in my hometown called Brzezina.
Mm-hmm.
And for a time, the Australian army had a encampment over there, and they they took a lot. There's some Lebanese that apparently talked to them, and they went with them to Australia to start their businesses over there. And some grew really successful in Australia, and you'll see a lot of Lebanese immigrating to Australia too.
Well, we
Um,
in I'm sorry to interrupt, but in I know that well I have to advertise it because shameless plugs. In January we're going to have two well hopefully two um Australian Iraqi migrants who will probably have more to say about that because I have heard a lot of about a lot of Middle Eastern presence. I thought it was Iraqi refugees mainly, but you're saying Lebanese people moved there?
yeah, a lot of immigrated over there, just like Nigeria. They immigrated to Nigeria and Brazil.
Really? Nigeria too?
Now, I would say not exactly immigrated to Nigeria. They just work there and come back to Lebanon.
Okay.
And what I wanted to add is, now technically there wasn't any sort of occupation that caused English to boom in Lebanon. It was
Okay.
probably a matter of convenience
Okay, so like
because
cultural exchange maybe?
the
Or
cultural exchange and the fact that English was becoming more and more of a necessary language with the foundation of with the
mm.
internet and everything being mostly based in English.
So you're
Um,
saying
the
so
computer,
is
so
was it a recent thing? Like when did English really start becoming a thing in Lebanon?
um, now dating back to the Civil War, I remember that there was a lot of American presence in Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, a an American, I believe some American missionaries,
Mm-hmm.
they came to Lebanon, but that was before the Civil War even. That they opened
Mm.
AUB, American University of Beirut,
Oh, okay.
and that's like one of the main English like the American presences in Lebanon. That's where
Okay.
like American influence started really flowing into Lebanon when they made
Um,
AUB. And that's how English started spreading into Lebanon. And more importantly, they started realizing that English is the language of the future. Like everybody
mm.
needs to speak English eventually. I mean, for the most part, to understand
The,
the internet.
I know
And
I've had this. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
and that's how it ended up that English started being taught at schools in Lebanon. And
Gotcha.
you notice that most universities in Lebanon are English based. A lot of
Oh,
them, at least, are.
okay. I think a similar thing is in Puerto Rico. But what I wanted to say was that I have this perception that um, part of Middle Eastern culture, especially migrants, is adapting quickly to whatever situation it is for in the name of survival. Um, because it seems like you guys had the foresight to know that English was going to be very important, and so you quickly incorporated that. That's what I'm perceiving. Um,
I believe that's the case. I don't necessarily know much about the history of how English got there, but I know for the most part that's why it would happen.
and I don't know how much you've spoken with other people who have migrated to the United States or other people or other countries, but would you say that um, quickly adapting is a theme? And the reason I say that is because I've, perdón a mi gente latina, no es un insulto, but I gotta say the truth. The Latino community in the United States is probably one of the slowest to adapt or assimilate or completely refuses. Um, I mean, we're speaking in English, and you came here 2 years ago, and again, it's not an insult, but like you came here ready, and like from what the way you're describing Lebanon and how I remember living in Puerto Rico seems very similar, yet unfortunately so many of my people don't have that foresight. So I really do respect that about Middle Eastern cultures is that you guys are a little more forward. I mean, apparently say that they're stuck in the past, but they have an eye in the future as well. And like, well, hey, I'm planning on moving to the United States, or that might be a possibility, or wherever in the West. Let me learn English to be ready. Is that
Well,
accurate?
I wouldn't say I knew I was gonna come to the United States when I was just about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. So
Mm-hmm.
like that was a long process for the green card, but we were gonna get taught English anyway
Mm,
because the country at the end of the day, the country itself is teaching English. It's required.
it's same in
So
Puerto
no
Rico.
matter if we're gonna travel or not, I mean, if you go to Lebanon, you'll notice that most of them speak English. I'm not sure about the accent though. It might be a little still, I mean, Lebanese accent. But
It's expected.
I mostly got more proficient with English because thanks to my cousins
Mhm.
who lived here. They were born here, lived here all their life, and they just come here, visit us during the summer, and that's where I pick up most of my English accent
Okay.
from them, and some of that Nigerian accent from my other cousins, and that's how I ended up picking up all these the accent. And when I came here, people were surprised, like how good. I mean, you speak really clear English,
I got
and
that all the time back when I came here. Oh my God. I I don't know, and this is the racism of low expectations, which I loathe. They thought that, or they were,
I mean, it doesn't bother me too much, really.
well, they probably didn't do this to you. Now, I went to a school that, oh my, when I came to school here, I got into AP English, which was Advanced Placement English for those who are outside the United States, which is basically college level English, particularly literature. And it's like, what's this immigrant doing with us, the smart elite people of this high school? Um, why is he here? Was and I never knew racism until I came to the American hood. Now that is strange. People might not believe it, and I have had racist white people say
That
stuff to
is
me.
pretty believable. I mean,
Okay,
considering how the country is, but you also gotta know something that how long ago was that? Was that about 10 years
oh
ago?
07.
2007.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about an event that took place about 13 years ago, almost 14 now.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta know something that things change. I would
True.
say things have changed because I haven't really experienced practically almost no racism, or at least what I perceive as racism, because somebody else might perceive something else, something I experienced as racist, but I don't, because I guess I haven't really been exposed to this kind of you know race things, and I honestly have never really been offended by anyone. The most I would say is I either laugh at them for saying something ignorant or just
Mm-hmm.
explain it. But for the most part, I would say people have been really open.
And now that you mentioned that, I see a lot of people who are either are born here in a different race or are migrants or immigrants like us, where it's like they are quick to use the racist term, and maybe it's just ignorance, or maybe they're being clumsy. Like if I don't perceive malice in what you're saying, like then I'll let it slide. I mean, I'll get angry maybe, um, but I sort of see it this way, like they want to feel comfortable around you, so they'll make a stupid joke. In my book, if you want to make a Puerto Rican joke, I can make a black joke, I can make a white joke, I can make an Asian joke, or we don't make any racial jokes at
I'm the
all.
kind of person who would think it's mostly fair game
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to jokes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see how stand-up comedians just go at it like they're joking on. They specifically target racist, like not necessarily racist, like race jokes and that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
um,
They
because
used
it
to.
tends to be funny.
They
And
used to.
for the most part, it's actually productive because they're targeting actual issues with their jokes. Um, But then again, at some point, you gotta know when to stop because sometimes you also have to consider that other person's feelings on the
Yeah,
matter.
there
So
there's
you
a
always have
balance.
to, there's always a balance, and you also have to consider that that person you're talking to might be more sensitive and you don't know what they're going through. So you gotta
And
watch what
sometimes
you say sometimes.
it's not even a good joke. So sometimes it's like it's not a joke, it's mockery. Because I remember, again, in the hood, people would be like, "Oh, does Puerto Rico have roads? Does Puerto Rico have colleges? Oh, do you have like do you have running water and toilets, or you have porta potties? Like what? Like
Dude, those people are watching way too much. What are they?
I don't know what
Cinema,
they're
I
watching because
guess.
like literally like anything you see in Puerto Rico, you see a paved road. Like yeah, we have nice mountains, and yeah, we have shacks, but we have paved roads.
Dude, people, it's ignorance. It's not mockery. It's not racism. It's just downright ignorance. It makes you look stupid when you ask these questions.
I,
Come on.
I, I, I would usually say ignorance, but I perceive malicious intent, and that's where, again, yeah, to me, it has to do with intent. Like, if at the end of the day, they learn to respect you, which half of them did, half of them didn't, um, then
You know
I
how I
let it
learned to
slide.
deal with the situations?
Was that?
I would usually, you know what I would do if they
Hmm.
do like say something like that? I play along just to just to laugh at them and just
True.
meet them with sarcasm, because if you take people like this seriously, I mean, you kind of like giving into them when you take them seriously. You gotta just ignore them and just play along, joke them out of it, or
And honestly, that again, since the show is about pop culture, um, that's where comedy really suffers because, um, for example, when I think about certain subjects I spoke of in my novel, and I brought up to certain writers, they were upset, and I'm like, but once upon a time, people said that banned books were cool, and they had a whole section of banned books, and no book should be censored. No, censorship is evil. But now, like 10 years after seeing those, or 20 years after seeing those displays, it's like censorship is good. And I'm sorry, but if they start censoring black comedians for racial jokes, I'm gonna lose it because black people honestly like aside from Gabriel Iglesias, who is killing it always, like black people are the kings of comedy. If they start censoring them, I'm gonna lose it. Like what I honestly want to see more Martin Lawrence
there's
content. I
just
want to
no way
see,
you can please everyone, and unfortunately, people don't understand it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I love about black communities is they will go there and they're not mean-spirited, and unfortunately because of American cultural perceptions, they're allowed to say things that white people aren't. I don't like that. Actually, let's go on that topic. Um, you when I don't know about you, but when I am around particularly middle class and upper middle class white people, not the ghetto white people, they don't care. But I see upper middle class and wealthier white people say like tiptoe around cultural subjects, and I've had a person who will literally censor me and cut the entire conversation when I bring up race, and it's just like, what happened to expanding black voices? I'm one third black. Like, you're censoring
This
my voice.
reminds me
I don't feel elevated.
this reminds me of when I talked to my boss about it. He's my friend too,
Oh,
and we were like talking about religion in general. Like he didn't understand the difference between he didn't understand what's a Christian, what's a Catholic, and he was kind of confused on the matter.
mm-hmm,
Um, because he wasn't a religious person himself.
right.
Uh, so when I wanted to talk about this out loud, and he was like, "Shh, be
Oh
careful.
yeah,
People here are sensitive. You gotta watch out
yeah,
what you say." I mean, we're just talking history. There's a careful. People are sensitive,
yeah. No,
and I was like, Okay, if this were Lebanon, this would never be an issue. People are not
Yeah,
sensitive in
yeah,
comparison to here. I mean, over there, even the jokes we do are so hardcore. Like, I tried to joke with this one friend of mine, and any joke that I bring up that's slightly out of line, she will not like it. She'll like tense up a little bit after it. And that's what I noticed here is that sometimes I think people take life way too seriously and way
yes,
too
yes,
over. They just react way too much over things that at the end of the day, they're just words. It doesn't matter.
yeah. Try dodging bullets in the hoods of Puerto Rico or missiles in the Middle East, which, of course, we're going to talk about later how it's not all
My
missiles,
town got bombed though.
huh?
Like there was once a tower near my the tower in a place called Aito was like on a mountain that's overlooks my town. It got bombed, dude.
Yeah, I don't want to
Yeah,
talk about cultural appropriation while that crap is happening. That's
yeah.
insane.
Shit happens, man. There's like some scary shit happens. It's serious stuff is happening
Hmm.
in the world, and you guys are just got mad about cultural this cultural appropriation thing, which I don't even understand.
So
I mean, there's so
I'll
much to be
explain
scared of.
I'll explain it briefly from what I've seen, and since it goes into what I just we're just talking about, is apparently in the academic world, um, it is seen as disrespectful if a white person dresses up, listens to the music, uses the language, speaks a dialect, or basically engages in any part of a different culture, which is not oohing and eyeing. Now I understand that it comes from a place where people would use blackface, and blackface is wrong, and blackface is messed up, and certain people who like to
I
say that
don't
they're
know. I mean, I remember that at one point they caused a problem with the pop singer called Sia.
hmm I didn't
I am
hear about this, but
she had to put black on her face like that, but that was part of the set. She had to
oh
like
no,
put black paint on her face because that was part of the set. That was part of the outfit, and people got mad because she was black facing, and I was like,
no.
um, how what exactly is black facing and what are you trying to achieve? Now I've seen racist examples of black facing that was in the 20s, I think.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
cartoons back then.
Yeah, that's true. They try to show themselves as I mean they try to depict the black people in a bad light, make them look
Exaggerated
evil.
lips and uneducated language, like that's insulting. Like if I was a black person watching that, I'd be
That was
pissed.
insulting. That's where I'd understand the the pissed off part comes in. But
Hmm.
not everybody who just happens to put black makeup on their face is a blackface. It's not that way. That's not how it works.
I'm sorry, but Pokemon Sword and Shield, the Crown Tundra expansion pass is coming on on October 22nd. This is not a paid promotion, but for all my gamer fans out there, Pokemon fans out there, so this was like this Thanos snap event in Pokemon, in the Pokemon world, sort of where there are like 900 Pokemon, and then when Pokemon Sword and Shield came out, 500 disappeared. And so they're starting to bring some of them back, but all of them, not all of them are being brought back. The Black Widows. Here we go. The Scarlett Johansons of the world. Um, but they did not. So you probably know Magmar, Electabuzz, and Jinx from the
Hmm.
original 150. And then Jinx had a baby named Smoochum. So they brought back Electabuzz and Magmar, which are like right there next to her in the Pokedex. And Jinx is going to be left in the Thanos snap. Jinx and Smoochum. So that they started giving.
Jinx was the psychic Pokemon, right?
She was the one that looked like a human, And so they said
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that was blackface because she had black skin and big lips. I understand, like in a way, it
Was her
kind of looked
skin
like
black? Because I thought it was a little bit towards navy. Like,
no, what,
if I remember.
because you were probably born like post like 96, 97, I'm sure. By then they
98.
changed.
Yeah.
By the time you were probably watching Pokemon, they changed her skin. By like Gen 3, they changed her skin to purple or yeah, to purple. It was
Yeah, I
originally
remember that.
black.
Like, I was still like fire red or something like that. And
Hmm.
I remember Jinx and Mr. Mime. I didn't see anything offensive with Jinx. She really looked like an egg with hair, to be honest.
Yeah, she's
So I don't see how you can blackface an egg.
well. If you look at the original Pokemon materials, like well they banned the episode where Jinx debuted because it was when she had black skin. And I
But
understand that.
that's but
Go
that's
ahead.
counterproductive because on one hand you want representation, and on the other hand you don't want cultural appropriation. And
Well,
now you see that these things are colliding with each other.
right,
And
because
at the end of the day, the way I see it is people are just looking for something to be offended about. And
like Jinx was not supposed to be even a representation of black people because you like no, no. I mean, no, black people don't naturally have blonde hair like Jinx did and really have ice or psychic powers. But it was actually a caricature of Japanese girls, Ganguro girls. But when they localized it to America, activists and people got offended of all the other things that they offended about Pokemon. They also targeted Jinx specifically for that. Um, but it's like now where that was a mild, um, sort of allowable offense or reason to be offended. Now you have Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's, and it's like Aunt Jemima was wealthy, and you are erasing. You know what? Yeah, no, I don't like it. I mean, I don't like it. I think that I think it does a disservice to us as immigrants or migrants because people are gonna get at me. It does a disservice to us when white people or black people too are made to be apprehensive around us, um, so that they don't offend us. Like that, you know what I mean? Like I feel like it separates us, and it's like you can't be who you truly are, and
Mhm,
that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna offend us, but that fear, like no one wants to be around someone who's afraid of you. At least I don't.
mhm.
I mean,
It's quite
have you?
strange.
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry. I just find this whole situation quite strange. Because honestly, in Lebanon, that's really not the case. In Lebanon, now I do understand that in Lebanon we're conservative. Like we'd rather people not show skin and whatnot.
hmm
Well, not exactly. Not everybody's like that. That's we're talking about the conservative, the specifically very conservative people.
socially
But
conservative,
then
not
again,
politically
that's
conservative.
everywhere. Socially conservative. The politics, they don't care.
Right.
Uh, but going back to the topic of Lebanon, um, what I
They went to Pokemon for some reason. I'm sorry.
no,
Oh,
that's fun. Pokemon was really popular in Lebanon too. Like we lost Lebanon
really?
at Pokemon.
Well,
Pokemon Go in specific. You know what? At one point, what
really?
happened? We started walking into the police stations to restricted areas to try to catch Pokemon, and people were and the police will be like, "No, what the hell?" They're
That
just like
is
grabbing
hilarious.
them. Since
Listen,
you're in here, why don't you just go to jail?
Pokemon Go. There are a lot of religious people who harp on it and just take it again too seriously.
It's a
Um,
video game.
it's a video game and it's fantasy. Um, yeah, I think
I think they
they'll
banned
probably
it
take.
because it touches on the issue of evolution, and people don't like that. But then again, it's not like they're evolving like they're growing up. It's like they level up and then they just magically lights come out, and all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden your Charleon has
Mm-hmm.
has wings. It's called a Charizard now. Charizard.
Mm-hmm.
I forget Pokemon.
But again, it falls into the the pop culture segment. Well, you know what? I think this conversation has been really good, and it would really benefit people to do another follow-up episode
Hmm.
because it's getting late.
No, I'm down.
Um,
Just let me know.
but I mean, because my novel does deal a lot with Lebanon, I think it would I would be remiss to just gloss over Lebanon and not go into it. I mean, my protagonist is half Lebanese. Oh, well, the antagonists actually are half Lebanese. I I can I'm worse than Tom Holland. I'm a spoiler machine. You know what? People are gonna forget it by then. People are gonna forget it. Okay, fine. Okay,
Yeah.
so so quickly on to the pop culture segment. So you said that Pokemon was popular in Lebanon. What other kinds of foreign media were popular in Lebanon?
Beyblades.
Really?
Beyblades, fidget spinners, anything that's usually trends in the world would trend in
Uh,
Lebanon.
okay.
Even like the iPods at one point and all that. That's all trend in Lebanon. Like Lebanon has seen everything, I would say.
Okay.
Uh, but most importantly, um,
Even
I
Baby Shark,
believe
I heard.
American, huh?
Even
Baby
Baby
Shark,
Shark.
yeah, it reminded me, yeah. Baby Shark, like at one point there was a protest. I think you've seen that video.
I heard of
A
it.
boy started crying in the car, and the protesters saw him crying, so he decided to sing Baby Shark so it calmed down. So it was like, I mean, Lebanese people are like the happiest depressed people in the world. They'll do some really wacky stuff just to crack out some laughs.
That does sound wacky, and honestly, the reason why I made this channel about pop culture, not politics, is because politics and religion do divide us and segment us, but pop culture
But
is
culture
supposed to
unites
be
us.
it unites us, and it's I mean not just entertainment. You're right, because like culture in general, as we've spoken about, really does unite us. And my God,
Which brings me to the point of how Lebanese culture is built.
okay,
Lebanese
yeah,
culture is built itself to unite people, even in
mm-hmm,
the way we dance. For example, the
really,
Debke dance.
uh-huh,
A Debke is usually when a drummer would come
uh-huh,
in with this big drum and he just
uh-huh,
hits on it with a small stick and a really big stick to make
uh-huh.
music noise. It's really loud.
Oh,
But the dance itself is people will just get out from the tables and they will hold hands and start dancing the Debke. And it's just
oh,
random people just holding hands and just this one group going in a circle dancing to the rhythm. And they have to be somewhat in synergy, I would say,
uh-huh.
and in harmony with each other so that the dance doesn't fail. They have to know when to do this step, that step, and when to duck and when not to.
That is
And
amazing.
that's how you have this group work. That's the dance, and that's how I find it uniting. You notice that Lebanese people, I noticed, are very hospitable. That's in general in Arabic culture. They're very hospitable
I've
of
heard that.
others. Even in their food, they tend to make a lot of food so that they're enough to everyone. And even we have this tradition of sharing foods with others. So, like our neighbors, we make some, say, rizajej, and we just send it to our neighbors if they don't had lunch today, or if we had made like a really good food and there's leftover, we send it to the neighbors. So you
Oh,
see that the neighbors are treated like family in a lot of cases, and everybody is close to each other, I would like to say, and that's what I really liked about. Uh, that's the absence that I feel here. That's what I feel is absent from here. I
um,
noticed also, like even the music itself, Lebanese music, it's always so festive for the most part. A lot of it is, and it depicts a lot of national pride, love, and happiness, and even sadness at some points. It's really beautiful, and it's very popular across the Arab world.
but meaningful. Like the lyrics actually mean something.
It we always have those fun songs that have no meaning, but
Okay.
a lot of the songs are meaningful and they are meant to depict Lebanese history and
Really
necessary how necessary it is to unite.
interesting. See, honestly, something like that in America would be considered retro and probably like redneckish. Which is interesting because we're gonna talk. We're gonna have an episode about the Mexican American experience. I have a very good friend I consider a brother in well two um in California that one of them came here from Mexico and the other one was born here and like they enjoy country music and they are very proud of America. One of them served in the Marine Corps, and it's just like I don't know about you, but when I come here and I see Americans just be ashamed of the country and just like denigrate it, and I fell into that for a little bit, but then I started understanding what American culture was and appreciating it, and it's like I, I'm proud to be in America. Every country is flawed, and America has had its shares of major flaws, but so has every other country. There's no innocent country on this planet, and I think that it does a disservice to us that we call this place home, and we really don't have anywhere else to go. It does us a disservice when people are here destroying things and causing and just destroying any little semblance of harmony over things that people don't have control over. Like, I don't care what your skin is like. Like, who are you as a person? Um, I don't know. What what's your perception on that matter? Like how patriotism is in Lebanon versus patriotism in America.
The You'll notice something that in Lebanon, uh, what I notice here, the biggest difference in patriotism is the fact that if someone here wants to be a patriot, they'll flash that they love America. They'll say like, "Hey, I'm American, all for Second Amendment guns and freedom of speech and whatnot." I
Uh-huh.
mean, it's pretty generic and almost, I gotta admit, it looks pretty redneckish at some points. Uh, but the major difference is in Lebanon, patriotism isn't depicted that way. It's depicted by love to the country, love to the people from your country. It's
It's
not
a
about
universal
guns. It's not
thing.
about liberty and freedom. It's more about unity.
Hmm.
And we sing about it. Like a lot of songs are really patriotic songs about Lebanon. They display mostly the endurance of the Lebanese people. Like after everything they've been through, how they're still enduring, and the courage at heart from
Yeah.
the courage and strength of heart the Lebanese people had. They they mostly talk about how sacrifices are made for the country to preserve their loved ones, and how the army has ultimately sacrificed so much to keep the country alive and the people, the innocent from getting hurt. And
Now is
you can't talk patriotism in Lebanon without talking about the army, which is the ultimate symbol of patriotism in Lebanon.
interesting. So are you saying that this is not something just exclusive to the elders or not exclusive to a certain generation? Like you're saying
Well,
this is something
actually,
universal?
surprisingly, in Lebanon, patriotism is universal to all ages, and everybody sees patriotism as a positive trait in
Interesting.
Lebanon. Like from children to the elderly people, everybody respects the Lebanese army, and if you don't respect the Lebanese army, you're not considered a decent human being in Lebanon.
Interesting. See,
Because they consider the Lebanese army to have done so many things to they consider them to be the least corrupt of everything. Even though the army has done some questionable things and people criticize that, at the end of
of
the
course.
day, they still side with the army because they consider the army Lebanon's last hope of survival.
Mm-hmm. That's so important. And again, I'm not here trying to promote an agenda. We live in a country. Ooh. Oh my God, the battery's almost dying. Um, we live in a country, and like I'm not going anywhere else. I'm sorry. Like I love Japan. I would stay there for a fat minute, as we say here. But I like this place. I listen. I don't know what your experience is right now in American academia. It's probably goes something a little bit like this. They tell you all the bad things America did, all the history with different races, with slavery, Jim Crow, the Trail of Tears. Um, I don't know, all the negative things, or it's not even bring it up. Um, but we really don't hear much about the positives. Like, and even when it's a positive that it's being brought up, it's as the fruit of something negative. Like we fought for XYZ right and we got it. And there was bloodshed and there was
Unfortunately, I don't think this problem is restricted to just the United States. That's a universal problem. Whenever there's news, even in Lebanon, it's always negative. There's always something bad because unfortunately, negative stories are to draw attention more
well
than
that but
positive ones.
that's the news media. That's for selling clicks and ad space. But I think that one of the more egregious things is when it's in academia because that's what's shaping people's minds. And I'm gonna be honest, I was taught in school basically to hate America. Like I was a weeaboo in honestly throughout all my undergrad years. I was a weeaboo. It took me a long time to grow out of it, but part of what helped me grow out of it was coming to appreciate America. But I couldn't have done that because, again, all the emphasis in the academic world is the bad stuff. Like I didn't know much of the good. And where I'm going with this is there should be no reason why American patriotism should be perceived as redneckish. Um, and even like in the back of my mind, like I perceive it that way, but it's like, but we all live here. The laws cover us all. Um, and honestly, one of the coolest things about this country is that no matter where you come from, and you can start from zero, you can become someone. Like I don't know, and you don't have to be like specific, but I imagine that 2 years ago versus now, economically, there's a difference, right? Like, there's a progression.
Mm-hmm.
And
It changes.
how possible is this in our home countries?
You mean economic advancement?
Yeah,
Um, I mean, sadly, COVID hasn't been very positive on the economy, as
true.
they say.
Actually,
But
Lebanon has gone through way too much.
yeah, Lebanon's economy has always been on a decline. It was never good. That was just
Really?
like a really bad blow. Like ever since I could remember, Lebanon always had a problem economically,
Interesting.
and it mostly had to do with their reliance on the tertiary sector, which is the sector of tourism. I
Like Puerto
think
Rico,
also
actually.
tourism and I think tariffs. This is what it is. Like it's money coming from outside.
Okay.
And the problem with Lebanon, what needed to happen was Lebanon needed to focus more on agriculture and production. And well, we don't
Puerto
have
Rico,
either of these.
escucha, Puerto Rico.
We have
Sorry.
agriculture. So yeah, I know I completely understand what you just said. Uh, but we have some agriculture and we have some production, but it's not enough to hold economies back. It's very limited, and we
So my
rely a
book
lot
is
on
really going to be
imports.
fictitious because one of the suppliers is in Lebanon, and I was going to ask you how realistic it was, but apparently not.
Like what?
Well, so in the book, the the Lebanese suppliers grow. tea leaves and other herbs and spices that the company that is at the forefront of the book would sell. And they actually sell some of those products to your character so that you can use them for perfume ingredients. And
Um,
the special thing about them is that their origin is so, I'm not gonna talk about their origin, but they're so aromatic that everybody wants them.
yeah,
Um,
they really Lebanon has a it has agriculture, and
okay,
they do this. They do export,
okay.
but it's not as strong as it should be.
Puerto Rico. Like I'm sorry, like Folgers has nothing on Yaucono. Like Bustelo, I know the Puerto Ricans love Bustelo here, and Bustelo, so we make do with Bustelo, but I like Puerto Rican coffee. People say that I'm not Puerto Rican. I'm sorry, no, 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 no. I love Puerto Rican coffee. It is good. And we like we have lots of coconuts, we have mangoes, we have sugar. I don't know why is it that here in the United States we don't have mangoes from Puerto Rico? Like why hasn't Puerto Rico made the infrastructure to properly export the excess mangoes that we have in Puerto Rico and avocados
Um,
and why do you buy avocados from Mexico and not Puerto Rico?
well, Nomar, it's all about supply and demand, and the other thing
True.
is, um, you have to understand maybe Puerto Rico simply doesn't have the funds or the facilities to make that possible, to make
Or the
exporting to long
intent.
distances easier.
Well, no, no, actually,
Now, huh?
this is the weird thing about Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is of course because it is a vestige of the United States in a way, or an appendage or whatever. Um, there's a lot of traffic by ocean. Like there's many shipments, so the infrastructure sort of exists where you could take advantage of it for trade. But Puerto Rico, I don't know. Honestly, I would like to hear someone's expert opinion on why Puerto Rico doesn't do more agriculturally. Something tells me that it's some sort of corruption or honestly um it's a possibility that because Puerto Rico is an American territory that our goods would be higher priced. I don't know. Because with Mexico you can transport by land. Questions for later. um it is 9:37 and I don't I don't want to end this because it's such um a fun conversation. Um, I think we should come back for a little bit more about the global perception. We talked a little bit about it. We could talk a little bit more about popular culture next time and the language game. I have heard especially when I was learning Arabic that there are a lot of similarities between Spanish and Arabic.
That stems
So
from the Moorish occupation of Spain. That's when the Moorish occupied most of the Iberian Peninsula, and you also have the Visigoths that were there. And I believe at the end of the day, what happened is Latin and Arabic mixed up and produced this new language, which was Spanish. That's what I believe happened.
hmm, I have to read up
I'm
on
not
that.
sure.
See, I'm now I'm curious. See, I learned something. I learned something about myself. That's if that's true. That's insane. Um, I I was under the impression that we are my ancestors um were under uh Ottoman occupation as well. Because I heard the Ottomans were
No,
everywhere. No?
not Ottoman. It was Moorish occupation. It was an Arab caliphate. The Ottomans only occupied all the way up to, I think, Morocco, but
I know they were in
the
Eastern
reconquista,
Europe because Johan will talk more about that in his episode, but I thought they were everywhere.
they occupied all the way from Bulgaria, almost
Yep.
Hungary,
Yep.
from
That's where Johan's
Hungary
from.
down through Anatolia, like Iraq, parts of Iran,
Really?
and all the way to Morocco. But that was because they captured the whatever what used to be the Arab Empire. Like they kind of took over that. And then they
Okay.
defeated all the Mamluks and whatnot. But they were unstoppable for a period.
Oh,
And they
wow.
reached all the way to Morocco, but they never really got into Spain because by then Reconquista was done, and there was a peninsula over there that separated them. And I believe Spain had naval superiority over the Ottomans, and so they I don't think they ever tried to get in there. Besides, eventually like European powers started taking over North Africa, and
Okay.
eventually Ottoman Empire declined.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to talk more about this. Um, and we'll have to um, keep this going for a second segment, but that is all we have for today. Thank you again, Joe, for coming on. Hope to get
Thanks for having me.
hear from you soon. No problem. Um, and that is all. That has been Konnichiwa Habibi with YG Garcia and Joe Kamari. Um, Good night, everybody.